What we're going to talk about here is accuracy and the importance of accuracy in your first writing question on the test. It's basically the #1 thing that determines your score, besides the amount of details that you have. So a lot of times what I notice is that students have some inaccuracies that they can take care of. So this video is all about helping you do the best you can to get the highest score possible. If you do this right, you're in the top level. You're going to get 28 to 30 out of 30 as long as your grammar is good and so is your punctuation. So the first thing that I want to explain is spelling. Sometimes I understand that you're learning, you're reading, you're listening to words that are kind of new to you. So it's not going to be easy to spell a brand new word in a foreign language. However, sometimes I see spellings that don't quite make sense. For example, let's say you have an integrated writing about nuclear energy, right? And you misspell nuclear. Okay, I understand that that's a tough word to spell, but it doesn't make sense for you to misspell it if it's actually in the reading, if it's the title of it. So I want to make sure that you remember that when you're having trouble with the word, if the word is mentioned in the reading, take a look at it. That way you can spell it correctly. It's a very minor point, but I want you to have that habit of always trying to do the things that you can to make it as perfect as possible. And that's a simple one. Just on an extra note, I also noticed that with phrases. For example, our phrase states something like, when we're talking about the first reason, first, the author states that. So states. Sometimes I have students that say state, right? S-T-A-T-E, no S. There's no reason for that because the phrases have the everything grammatically correct. So I want to make sure that you study the phrases just like you use the reading to help you be accurate when there's no need to be inaccurate. So those are minor points. Let's get to the important stuff. The important information is how you relate the details in the lecture. So the first thing is you got to have the details. So sometimes you might find that when you compare your essay to my essay in the system, my essay has a few more details. Forget the explanation, the grammar, but just some points that you didn't mention. For example, oh, the professor talks about how the zoo animals, right, aren't in real exhibits. They're in misleading exhibits. I didn't have that point. That's a missing detail. So what you want to do to improve your ability to get those important details is work on dictation. And you should know by now that dictation is when you listen to the lecture and you write down everything you heard as you heard it, every preposition, every article, every word. It helps you to develop a stronger ear for those pieces of information that you need in your notes. Also, check out the video where I show you how you can work with dictation to help you take really powerful and effective notes, which is very important for question #1. Now, let's say you work and you get all of those details. Now, there are a couple of ways that you can write those details in the essay. One is a good way and one is a not so good way. So unfortunately, the not so good way is something that I have a tendency to see in some student essays. So let's talk about what I mean by that. I always tell you that you just want to say all the details. If you write all the details, you're going to get a top score. Almost. Simple sentences behind the details, but you got to show the relationship. Here's what I mean. Let's say in my notes I have 2 key words, hungry and eat. So I use standard English, standard, kind of references to the professor, and I write my essay. So it sounds something like this. It reads something like this. The professor states that the student was hungry, period. He states that he also ate. So what does that sound like? That sounds pretty related, right? I can understand that there's a relationship, that he was hungry so he ate. There's probably a connection, right? Anybody can understand that. So sometimes your details explain themselves. You just have to write a simple sentence and people are going to understand the story. But that doesn't always happen, especially for integrated writing. Some of those are going to be hard and you need to explain them. So let me give you another example. Let's say you have the keyword television in your notes and you also have the keyword tired. So now it becomes a little bit different because now if I say things in different ways, they have completely different meanings. So for example, if I say, the professor states that the student watched television. He also states that the student was tired. Now that sounds like 2 independent facts that have no connection. Now if that was correct, if the professor said that, you're perfect. But if the professor showed that there's a relationship there, and you say the sentence is in that way, it sounds like you didn't quite understand. So your score isn't going to be as high as it should be. Because think about it, when we say it's not quite the same, so this needs a little bit more detail to be accurate. So you need something like, the professor explains that the student watched television because he was tired. Now I know first he was tired and then he watched television. So I understand some extra information. For this student, television is a nice way to relax, a nice way to get the energy back. Right? So there's a lot of things happening underneath that if you just give me separate facts, don't exist. And that background information is what the grader needs to know that you understand. And he only or she only knows you understand it by showing that relationship. Think about it, we can also switch it. We can say the professor stated that the student was tired because he was watching television. Now we have a different relationship. First he watched television and then he became tired. So now the idea behind it is that television is negative. It's not so helpful. That's why, it makes students tired. It's not something positive. So if you create one relationship, it shows that it's positive. Television is good. If you show a different relationship, it shows that television is negative. So that's usually what the professor does. He shows you something is good or bad, right? Because he's attacking or supporting something. If you just show two separate facts, the grader can't know whether you understand if it's positive or negative, or if you even knew that there was a relationship that connected them. So what you have to do is you have to get a little better at making sure that when you take notes, you have little phrases or words or arrows that show you the relationship, right? So if you have a television and then an arrow that points to tired, television caused someone to be tired. Or you go the arrow in the other direction, you know that the student was tired so he watched television, something like that. So you have to create your own system to help you. And you also have to understand at least that it's important to not only mention the details, but connect them, to really explain the story and explain how the professor explains his point and how that point refutes or opposes the information mentioned in the article. So those are the key points to improve your essay, to improve your accuracy. I hope it was clear. If not, let me know. Good luck, work hard, because this stuff takes time. But if you do it well, you'll definitely shoot up your writing score quite a bit.